So happy Monday, everyone. This is Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. It's another kickoff to a great week here at Business as Usual. I'm very happy to be here. I'm thrilled about our guest today. We're going to pack a lot in 30 minutes, and I'll introduce formally Alison Alvarez in a moment. But let me just start with welcoming Jonathan Kirsting. He is the Vice President of all things media and storytelling, and he will be monitoring the chat to make sure that we're having an active and inclusive conversation as much as we can, because there's a lot to pack in. I also want to thank Huntington Bank and 40 by 80. Huntington Bank has been a partner with us. This is a busy week as they've kicked off the second round of PPP, but they're good partners in and across Southwestern Pennsylvania. 40 by 80 is the wholly owned subsidiary of the Pittsburgh Tech Council, which it means the longitude and latitude of Pittsburgh. And we work on things in that organization that are tied to workforce development and supporting entrepreneurs. So we're going to get into the show. We've muted your chat, and we've done that just so that we can make sure we're not hearing anything in the background, and we're focusing all on Alison. And just to be considerate, many of us have animals at home like I do, and mine is going to behave right now. So the other is that in this, we have a chat, and the chat, Jonathan's going to keep his eyes on the chat to see if there's questions that we have some time to ask. But also, this is not an opportunity for you to sell your wares. This show is all about Alison Alvarez and ways that we can support her, listen to her, and just make sure everyone knows the magic that's happening here in Pittsburgh. So now we're going to jump in. We're going to jump in, and I'm going to say, okay, we have Alison Alvarez, and she is with us from BlastPoint. And I want her to talk about BlastPoint and talk about who is Alison. We're going to start that way. Who is Alison?
Hi, my name is Alison Alvarez. I've been living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania since 2003. I came here to attend Carnegie Mellon University. I'm a proud graduate of both the School of Computer Science and the MBA program at the Tepper School of Business. I'm the CEO and co-founder of BlastPoint, based here in Pittsburgh. We are one of the fast-growing startups here in Pittsburgh. We build software. We're a bunch of nerds. And the software we build is designed to help really big corporations and even small ones understand who their customers are, what they're going to buy, what they need, so that they can foster lifelong relationships with everybody who does business with them. And we work with a lot of the utilities here in town, as well as regionally. We serve a lot of the tier 1 and tier 2 utilities in the United States. We also work with one of the largest car makers in the world, top 5. We help them understand what features they're going to build, what markets they're going to have, and to prepare for the next generation of automotive.
So now let's talk about who are you? Who is Alison? Let's talk a little bit about who you are, and because you've done other things as well. So let's start. Where did Alison grow up?
So I'm from Jonesboro, Georgia, which is in the deep South. My mom is actually a Pittsburgh native, one of 18 kids. My dad is an immigrant from Cuba, who's been in the United States since he was 7. If you know anything about the Cuban American community, they have some very deep entrepreneurial values. My family's always pushed me to be an entrepreneur. I can say that most of my career, I didn't do that. I worked for some of the startups here in Pittsburgh. I've worked for Valor Water, a Y Combinator company out in California. I've worked for Innovative Systems here in the South Hills, just building software, understanding software markets. That's really been my forte, especially when it comes to designing software that really works for businesses. But other than being a big nerd, I really love living in Pittsburgh. I'm from Atlanta, where the summers really are not fun. And I love that the summers are glorious here. And I love that I can afford to live here, which is one of the big reasons that, I came here from school. I moved here from Washington, D.C. I saw how much houses cost, and I was like, are you kidding me? And I've lived in the same house that I bought when I was a grad student, which is completely insane.
That is awesome. But you could have left, and there's lots of reasons besides the weather that you stayed, right?
Yeah, for January and February can be tough. I think it's just tough now because like I can't, like I would love to go to the beach, and I just feel like that's not really a wise thing to do right now. So I think
Right.
it just it's making this one a little extra tough. But otherwise, like this is my home. I'm raising my kid here. This is where I live.
Wow, that's great. So I like reading a little bit about your dad a little bit. So, his efforts to encourage you down the path of entrepreneurship. So as a Cuban American, and your mother has, like when you said 18 kids, I never knew that before. So that's a lot. So talk about those efforts. Talk about what his role was or is with you.
Yeah. I mean, if I showed the remotest interest in anything as a kid, he would try and build a business around it. So if I was like interested in printmaking, he would buy me a full setup for t-shirts. And actually, that's not even true. He would go to the thrift store, or he would go to a pawn shop, and he would find stuff to like underscore my business because like he's a frugal guy. And he kind of pushed me my whole life to own a business. I was like, no, Dad, I'm going to work for the man. And that was like my own rebellion. I really like health insurance. Fortunately, BlastPoint has health insurance now. But it was kind of almost like when I realized that we actually had a really good potential business, it was almost like, fine, Dad, you win. Because he's always pushed me here my entire life. I think, it's not just Cubans. I think a lot of the Hispanic community, it's a lot about owning your own business, being your own boss, and, shaping your job to who you are rather than the other way around. And I've definitely seen it in the Cuban community. My abuelo owned a stone quarry in Cuba that
Oh,
was
wow.
seized by the communists. So now when he came to the United States, he spent his whole life building a new business because that was how it was going to be. And I'd like to think he'd be really proud of me if he was still around right now. But I used to think, something else was my dream job. But honestly, like if I won the lottery and I got $100 million, like I don't think I'd change what I'm doing. I'd stop fundraising. That would be really nice.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like I think I do the exact same job every single day.
Well, so, that is a great story and definitely very inspirational. You started Blast Point though, in Project Olympus, is that correct?
Yeah, we are a Project Olympus company. We were also based out of the Sports Center in at Carnegie Mellon. We had a lot of really great advocates for us. Project Olympus was like there from us from the beginning, which is really amazing. And we're really happy that we had somebody who believed in us from the very beginning. We were founded as a class project. I had an idea for a way of making data more accessible. I was working for a company called Risa here in town. They were eventually purchased by Nielsen. And I was thinking about just different ways to make data easier for people that I'd learned on my job. And I found my co-founder Tomer through the Connects workshops at Carnegie Mellon. We've always had Kit at Project Olympus there to like lend a firm hand and when we're like not in the right direction. So that's been wonderful from the beginning. And I don't think we would have this company at all without the connections and support we got from just being at Carnegie Mellon. I'm nobody. Like I'm from a family that is not rich. My co-founder isn't either. And having those kinds of connections is something that, I don't think we would have gotten just out there on our own.
Right. It's all about the relationships. It absolutely is.
Yep.
And hats off to you for being able to navigate that and getting the support at the same time, because it's not that easy. So, one of the things that you have said, we've talked about artificial intelligence, taking information and making it useful. So you've actually said that you want to be the world's most useful person. How did that concept come about? How did that help shape the purpose and vision for BlastPoint?
Yeah. So I feel weird going back to the Cuban thing again, because like, I don't think about this much in my normal life. I'm usually thinking about pizza more than I am about being Cuban American. But, I had a family who fled to a completely new life, leaving almost everything behind. And when you think about doing that, the only thing you have is, your family and yourself. And if you're able to learn how to do a lot of things, learn how to be a person who's able to contribute, that's something that nobody can take from you. And so for me, that's always been a really important part of my identity and how I want to live my life, because I know things can change really quickly. And as long as we have our health, and have, our ability to contribute, I think that's the most important thing. So it's not just, things like computer programming, it's learning how to tell a story or change a diaper or, manage a budget, or grow a garden. It's lots of things like that. And you never know when this stuff will get useful. It's really great for building ties with other people, because, no matter, where you are and who you are, like there's probably stuff that you know how to do that's really valuable. And I think it's a really great way to connect with people.
It is. I think I'm going to put that like when I brush my teeth, if I just have a thing that just says be useful, and I'll give you the quote. So you can harness that. So you've done work with the energy sector, but COVID really brought, the energy sector and the issues with a lot of new meaning, and particularly now as we head into 2021. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, with COVID, there's 22 states that put on moratoriums and payment. There's about $40 billion in excess payments out there. This is costs that are being absorbed by utilities, and it's costs that they were not expecting, and it's costs they're really having difficulty managing right now. And so we're working with a lot of regional utilities, helping them manage, basically forecasting, understanding, hey, if I put in a particular rooftop, are the people in that house really struggling due to COVID, or are they fine? I mean, looking in the Pittsburgh area, we see it's only 1 out of every 8 households that are really struggling with COVID. And everybody else, they seem to be, at the very least, making the same purchasing decisions that they usually do, and paying their bills on time and acting exactly as they would even if COVID wasn't here. But it's that 12% of households that are really struggling under this burden. And if you can know who they are and how to interact with them in advance, you have a lot better chance of getting them back on track, because what's happening is these debts are snowballing. And if you get to a time where suddenly you can shut people off for a non-payment, people are going to owe $20,000. It's going to be, we're looking at, even for, back rent to landlords, it's around $5,000 for a lot of households. And it can be really overwhelming, because if you're having trouble in COVID, you don't have that kind of money. There's a minority of American households who can even are prepared to pay an unexpected $400 bill. Like owing thousands of dollars to utilities and their landlords, it's an overwhelming problem. But it's one that at the very least you can incrementally manage.
So today, I think it was today, right? In Inc. magazine, you were featured. I think was it today, Alison?
I think that's when the article came out. Yes.
The article just came out this morning. You're giving advice on how to compete. Some of the pieces in there were giving advice on how to compete and succeed in business plan competitions. And let's just frame that, everyone. As she mentioned before, many people who are building companies, they actually have some friends and family that help them. And Alison looked around with her co-founder and just said, wait a second, we don't have access to that. We got to look at things differently. So yeah, talk about that article, because I think that's an important point.
Yeah, part of it's that I think the ways that especially high growth companies, the kind that are going to be seeking investment, are funded right now is in a way that's really not equitable at all. Because some people have relatives who can cut very large checks and will not be mad at you if that money disappears, because honestly, most startups do not succeed. So it really is a gamble with not very good odds in the end. And having those kinds of, not just connections, but people who have a fondness in their heart for you enough to write you a massive check. That's, just thinking about everybody out there. that's probably like a very small number of us. And yet when you see who gets to build businesses, who gets the lion's share of VC dollars, it's people with those kinds of backgrounds. And that's how things are. And it doesn't seem fair. And I gotta say, I'm like one person in one company. I don't think we're quite at the point where we can change the system. So we look for ways to be successful within the system that exists. So there are things like business plan competitions where you learn how to pitch, and they can have profound economic effects. For us, it was enough money for us to start this company. And we did it because we were able to tell our story really well. And we think, ultimately this is not the way to like, even the playing field, unless there's a lot more business plan competitions, because it's just a drop in the bucket. But if you're like us and you're like, I don't have a rich uncle who's going to write me a check, right? You gotta go with what there is. And so what we did was we learned how to be really good at pitching, at winning these competitions. A lot of it's because like I really like doing paperwork. Before I did this, I won a lot of scholarships. And, a lot of the techniques I learned winning scholarships so I could pay for my undergraduate and my graduate degrees, I was directly applicable to these business plan competitions, because it's all about selling yourself, your idea. Why is it worth it to spend this money on me? And what am I going to do with it that's going to be so great? And I think if you get good at that, even if you don't win every single time, not only do you make connections, you get really good feedback. And eventually, once you get everything together, you might even win. And it means that you're going to have that capital to get your company off of the ground.
So give us a couple of examples. Give us some of your just a couple secrets, not all of your secrets. Because I think it's pretty funny in the Inc. article talked about, oh, we need a printer. And you said, oh, okay, let's see where we can, apply for some sort of competition because we need a printer. I mean, so it's your resourcefulness is remarkable. So tell us, just give us a couple of examples of what you think when people make mistakes. I don't want to give away.
I mean, the biggest one is doing everything at the last minute. I'd say if you can figure out about these competitions and do everything early, and not only that, there are 1 million people in this town who are there to take what you're doing and make it better. We've got innovation institutes at both Pitt and Carnegie Mellon. We've got Innovation Works, lots of more open platforms to help people get feedback. And I think if you do this stuff in advance and you talk to people, the best people to have in your corner are the ones who will be really honest with you. There's a lot of people who are like, you're doing great, sweetie. And that's like not the kind of person you want. You want someone who will be like, well, this is starting to come together, but you've got to do this, this, and this, and they won't believe you for this, so you got to do this. And the first couple of times you do it, you're not going to have this stuff internalized. It's good to get a second pair of eyes on this. I guess the other important thing I'd say is, I learned this from scholarship competitions, is that every single one of these competitions has a rubric by which they're grading you. And generally, if you ask what it is, they'll tell you. They don't always publish it, so you don't know that they care about these 4 things, and you need to make sure in your pitch that you check those boxes. And so it's not cheating. It's being resourceful to go to those competitions and say like, hey, how are you grading people? And once you know that, it's a lot clearer how you put together your argument for like why I should be the winner and not necessarily somebody else.
Mm-hmm. There's a question by Bob.
Yeah, so Alison, thanks for joining us today. It's always great to see you, and your story is absolutely amazing. It's such cool stuff. Bob Chappell wants to know, have you considered getting your minority DBE through the SBA or using any of the other SBA programs available to go after set-asides in other government contracts?
Yeah, that's definitely on our agenda. Right now, my co-founder and I are split 50-50 with our stock. So it's like we don't quite qualify. We do qualify when it's like female led in a lot of cases. So I think we'd have to like rethink that. So this is like my advice. If you ever want to qualify for this stuff, look at that paperwork ahead of time. And when you're like splitting up founder equity, like don't do what we did. I'm very glad that I'm like 50-50 with my co-founder, because like I think It's very, very much a 50-50 partnership, but it's, you know, it's definitely something that we're missing out on if we'd structured our stock a little bit differently.
Yeah, good question. So in 2020, again, I can't believe it's 2021, but BlastPoint expanded the business to include automotive sector. And so just a couple of weeks ago, you released a report about the electric vehicle market, you know, sort of what's to come, that really picked up on some national attention too. So at the council, we're very excited about EVs. We're very excited about what that means for our region. And last week, I just want to give a plug that we're actually hosting Lion Electric. And I think you know that, Alison. And they're a large manufacturer of electric buses and delivery trucks. So we're going to have them on business as usual. We're also going to do some things with them behind the scenes. They're looking for a US manufacturing location, right? I'm crossing my fingers, right? We're going to do the best that we can do. So we want to connect them with local suppliers. Tell everyone about the EV space and why we should be paying attention. And we can put a link out there for people to actually download your report as well.
Yeah, I thank you so much for doing that. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart because it's both technology and it's the future, man. And what's really interesting is you'd think, you know, 2020 would be kind of a not great year for selling EVs, but there was actually a pretty big leap in the total sold. And I think one of the most interesting things is that there's a headline that just came out that the average new car costs about $40,000. However, EVs are getting cheaper. So for example, Hyundai is selling electrical vehicles that when you take subsidies into account, they cost less than $20,000. So electrical vehicles, there are tons of objections to them, like the range argument, the amount of time it takes to charge them, the overall cost. There's even a very healthy secondary and used market for electrical vehicles right now. And so they're starting to be a little less differentiated from regular combustion vehicles while still offering a lot of amenities that, you know, like being healthy for the environment, like being relatively inexpensive to fuel. One of the most interesting things that I've seen lately is that when it comes to cost per kilowatt hour, solar is starting to be one of the cheapest available energy sources out there. So even if you end up switching from combustion gas to electric vehicle, it's now getting cheaper and cheaper to fuel with renewables, which means we're more likely to hit our climate goals overall. And, you know, with Joe Biden coming into office, he's pledging to build another 500,000 electrical vehicle charging stations in the United States. It's early days in that. That's like, I think 5x from where we are right now. And so there's a lot of potential for that. Much of that EV charging activity has been concentrated in, you know, putting them in people's garages. And it means that, you know, I'm a Pittsburgher. I live in the city. I park on the street. And I'm sure a lot of other people, you know, who would like to have electric vehicles do too. And so expanding this infrastructure means that even people who don't have maybe their own private charger at home will have access to stuff. And it just makes electric vehicles more equitable, more accessible. It just makes them a bigger possibility for a wider slice of the US population and beyond.
So if it's exciting, right? I mean, I think this is real. I don't think that any of this is just us doing some sort of popcorn thinking. I really think this is real. So are you excited for Pittsburgh and the region when it comes into this space? Do you think, you know, if you had your magic wand based on the data that you've been collecting, what do you think we should be doing?
Yeah, so I think there's so much potential gains in Pennsylvania. We're like in the infancy of this industry. So it's definitely like we only have up to go from here. And I've been out in California. I've been watching the charging infrastructure out there. There's Tesla charges, a bank of 12 of them at Target that people line up for. And you could see the future happening there with the way people use the infrastructure, the way they interact with it. And I think there's a lot to go here in Pittsburgh. I'd say the biggest thing is that electric vehicle charging stations, especially public stations, really echo economic investment. So you can see, just look, we have a report on this. You can just look at the map in a lot of US cities and see that where there are poor and minority populations, there is no charging. It's effectively EV charging deserts. And in areas where, everyone's got all the money, that's where electrical vehicle charging is. And a lot of the incentives for building electric vehicle charging has been bringing in those more spendy consumers and keeping them in your location. But as time moves on and the usage expands, we're going to have to think about how do we deal with this lack of economic investment, which honestly is a century old. It predates electrical vehicles by a lot. And how do we build charging infrastructure in an equitable way without 100% tying everything to, a commercial location, or, in these areas where where there's a lack of investment, it's not going to be good for 100% for our future to have these sort of, you can actually literally see red line maps pop up in the EV charging infrastructure. And it's not going to be good for us as a country long run to replicate that technologically.
So you think we should be investing in workforce development in this area to get ready for that?
I mean, not just workforce development, but partnerships in a lot of cases. I think, thinking about when I moved here 17 years ago and what the city looks like now, it's really different. Mm-hmm. And I think it means that there's opportunities in a lot of neighborhoods that didn't exist before. And I hope that there are ways of capitalizing on that. I know in California, 1 out of every 4 electrical vehicle charging stations needs to be built in a disadvantaged neighborhood. So there's legislation to sort of bring more charging infrastructure into those neighborhoods. And while by and large EV buyers are high income people right now, right, not going to stay that way. And when you think about the utility industry and the infrastructure, we have to think on order of decades, which means we need to start now when it comes to putting this infrastructure in place.
Right. So it's really interesting. Is there a question out there, Jonathan, before we go to
not a question, more of a comment of maybe if we have time to walk through kind of a practical way that BlastPoint maybe has worked with like Duquesne Light to really show how their analytics provides these insights that becomes helpful for both customer and for the company itself would be great for our audience.
Yeah, we're working with Duquesne Light on this right now. So we're really excited about it. A lot of what we do is look at residential customers and looking at potential pickup for individual households. So building their own charging station, understanding what subsidies are out there, and reaching out to those customers to build. And the way we do our systems is it's not built on, what your neighbor's doing. It's built on, your own individual household. And we talk about, equity and those sorts of things. They're built into our models so that we can look and find the best people, no matter where they are in the city, and help bridge that gap moving from combustion vehicles to electric vehicles.
So people want to know more about you and they want to get connected with you and they want to work with you. What's the best way?
Yeah, so I am Alison.Alvarez@blastpoint.io. I check my email constantly. Otherwise, I have my staff monitors our website constantly. So if you want to connect with us through there, we have tons of case studies and information about what we do and how everything works. We've worked with a very wide range of companies, all the way from Chula here in Pittsburgh, all the way up to one of the largest car makers in the world.
You work with Chula?
Yep.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So they're looking at expansion, and we're the ones who are helping them find the right places to do that.
Wow. So you work across all market sectors. So we've had a privilege to talk with you today, but it's almost every market sector that you're able to support. So thank you for doing the deep dive on the electric vehicles. I want to remind everyone that we actually do have the folks from Lion on Thursday, I believe. And we'll put that out there. So this is really useful. Join us for that. And, Alison, you've just been a champion. You've been a champion for Pittsburgh. You actually are. You might not realize that, but people are paying attention. to you and the work that you're doing and leading. And your points on equity have not gone unnoticed, and we really appreciate that. So I do want to say that lastly, at 2:00 p.m., we're actually hosting Marvin Chow. He is the Vice President of Global Marketing for Google, although I found out this morning he actually has 2 jobs. I don't know how he does it, but we're thrilled to have him as part of our Chief Marketing Officer Insight series. And that's at 2:00. If you want more information about that, you can go to our site, and under events, you'll see CMO_insights, and we'll be able to, you'll join us. So he's very interesting. It'll be fun to have a chance to talk with him. I had a chance to interview him a while back. So Alison, keep up the great work. Thank you for your vision. I'm going to put up "Be Useful" on my mirror, and I'm going to give Alison Alvarez credit for that, because I think that really grounds us in our work, and really appreciate just you being here in Pittsburgh and doing this work. We've put out some information on the chat. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And like I said, we also have something this afternoon at 2:00 Eastern Standard Time with Marvin Chow. Thanks, Alison. We'll see everyone here. Who's here tomorrow, Jonathan? I just realized that.
The one, the only, the definitive Tony Murphy from Comcast. She's the new Senior Vice President of the Keystone Region. She's a blast of energy, tons of fun. You got to be here tomorrow.
Tons of fun. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Thanks again, Alison.
Much appreciated. Thank you.